We read in Bereshit, Genesis, how from the waters of Eden, rivers branched out, the sources of life. The Song of Songs describes a beloved wife as a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters. Love and life are both sanctified by fulfilling the divine commandment, the mitzvah, of immersion in the pure waters of God's creation. The world we live in, fast-paced, stressful, rewarding, yet hard on the individual, hard for the family. But in the midst of the city, its noise, its crowds, there is a refuge, the Jewish home. The Baal Shem Tov, a great sage, asked, "Where can God, where can Hashem be found?" And he answered, "Wherever you let him in." A Jewish kitchen where kashrut is observed, God is there, tangibly, visibly. In the dining room around the table, Shabbat, holidays, warmth, beauty, God is there. Wherever you let him in, God is found. And in intimate relations between husband and wife, there too God is present. Torah views intimate relations as the husband's obligation to his wife and as her privilege. The ketubah, the marriage contract, specifies these obligations. The laws of Taharat HaMishpacha are first stated in Leviticus, chapter 18. They require that during a woman's menstrual period, a minimum of 5 days, and for 7 clean days afterward, the couple is not allowed conjugal relations or any physical contact. When a woman is not menstruating, during pregnancy, while nursing, or after menopause, husband and wife, under normal circumstances, are permitted to one another unrestrictedly. A woman past menopause should go to the mikveh one last time, so that the rest of her married life may continue in the spirit of the Torah. The mikveh is so essential to Jewish life that the building of one takes precedence over the building of a synagogue or school. After having counted 7 clean days following menstruation, a woman goes to the mikveh. She prepares herself in a private suite and bathes unhurriedly. She then calls for an attendant and is led into the mikveh proper. Here she goes down the steps, into the water, and immerses herself so that, if only for a moment, she is totally within the water. She recites the blessing and immerses once more. It is now a mitzvah for conjugal relations to be resumed. Thus is consecrated the expression of love between husband and wife, who become partners with Hashem in the continuity of the Jewish family. Jerusalem, focus of our history and faith. In this neighborhood, from the time of the Second Temple, every family had a mikvah, identical to our modern one. Each mikvah had a small pool connected to a reservoir of natural waters, such as rain or spring water. The pool with its steps, like ours, the reservoirs of old and of our time, the same. A charred wall has been traced to the very day on which the temple was laid to waste. Jerusalem devastated, Jews dispersed. But we did not abandon the Torah and its commandments. The mitzvah of mikvah is kept to this very day, due to the determination of Jewish families everywhere. Taharat HaMishpacha, Jewish family purity, is revealed in all its beauty by Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, the renowned Talmudic scholar.
Family, in general, is a basic unit of every human society. For Judaism, family is not just one of the concepts. It's a major pivotal point of Judaism, because one may imagine the whole Jewish nation really as one big family. It springs from a family, it grows into a larger family, but it is still basically a family. And therefore, family and family life are essential in understanding and, in fact, in being Jewish. And as life shows, family contains many members, but the core of the family is the woman in the family. Her life really controls the rhythm, the way, the movement of the whole family. And therefore, her life, the obvious life as well as the intimate life, are the essence of the family. The menstrual period is an inner rhythm within the woman. In fact, it is a rhythm of birth and death in a small scale, of life emerging and life passing. And therefore, as a central point, this cycle is in the inner, intimate way, the point of the Jewish family purity. In fact, the basic idea is that marital life, sexual relations, have to begin with the rebirth of a new hope, of the birth of something which is new within every woman, that is becoming renewed. It passes some time, and then comes the end of it, the slowing down, in a way, waiting for another renewal, another kind of birth. That is the very basic essence of the regulation of family life. Intimate, close relations, while things are growing, and then laying off, moving aside, keeping silence, keeping, so to say, apart at the time when it is not so. Keeping family purity is not just abstinence from sexual, even erotic relations within the menstruation period and sometime after. It contains also the ritual of purification, which is going into the mikveh. Now, the mikveh is basically based on a resource of natural water. Water is the source of life, the beginning of life. The world begins from being all in water, and it emerges from the water. Going into the mikveh means, symbolically, getting immersed entirely within the primeval, pre-creation state, becoming again a part of the nothingness, and from that can emerge something which is entirely new.
The Kogans, once active refuseniks, are now happily settled in Israel. Mrs. Kogan was one of a group of courageous Jewish women who had to struggle for the right of regular access to mikvah. She speaks of the difficult Soviet experience she encountered.
Some towns have mikvah in Russia, and for many years we kept mikvah. Sometimes we had a lot of difficulties with it because the mikvah itself was under the synagogue, and the people that worked in the synagogue, they knew everything about the women that went there, when, and who, and KGB was connected with the people, and KGB was connected with the people, and they always said to the people how to behave, and the people were afraid of them. And so sometimes it was very difficult. For instance, once the chief of the synagogue, he wrote such a note on the mikvah that women can go to mikvah only on Thursdays. We asked an old religious person, an old Hasid, how to behave, and he advised us to go to the rabbi, official rabbi of the synagogue, and to say directly that women can't go only one day a week. So we did. It was about 12, 13 women. We went to the rabbi and he was astonished very much because it was for the first time that women, a group of women together came to demand what they needed to do. And so he, for a long time, we had, we spoke, and then he said yes. And after that, so we didn't have such troubles.
But cold water was...
yes, but sometimes
was...
sometimes we came there and it was not warm water because nobody watched it and nobody thought about this. And so sometimes it was in winter and it was rather difficult, but women, have mikveh in very cold water.
Unlike the Soviet Union, the West, and North America in particular, boast comfortable mikvahs in more and more communities. Jewish couples in growing numbers choose to practice Taharat HaMishpacha. We spoke to 4 such couples about their attitudes and experience. The Dietschers are married 5 years. Miriam is an optometrist, and Monty's a computer analyst. Ellie and Joel Moss are married 13 years. She's a university lecturer. He's a social service administrator. The Azulés have been married for 23 years. Lucienne is a school principal, Gilbert, a government financial analyst. Rabbi Mordechai Glick and his wife Nina have been married for 24 years. Rabbi Glick is a psychologist and family consultant. Nina is a travel agent.
It is a precious moment where I am alone with myself and with Hashem. And this time of solitude and silence enabled me to question myself, to evaluate my mitzvot, what I did, what's the good thing I did, the bad things I did, and about other things that I can do in the near future. And I feel when I come back home that I am not only clean in the exterior, I'm clean in the interior, and this is more important for me than anything else.
I always enjoyed going to the mikveh, whatever the situation was with the mikveh. Unfortunately, many years ago, the mikvahs were not so attractive. But the fact that I was going to resume a physical relationship with my husband always made it something special. And I always returned to my bedroom, specially cleaned up and fixed up for that evening. And it was always special for us. And so I always went with pleasure.
I feel also a spiritual sense, I think, of, I guess it brings a sense of, I think, holiness into the whole aspect of what's going to take place. And it's very special. The mikveh itself, again, is very much, I'd say, the apex of the spirituality of the preparations. And after emerging from the mikveh, I feel a sense of, I'm going to say the word clean, but it's a bad word because we have all the sort of sense of menstruation being dirty and then coming clean. It has nothing to do with that. One feels a sense of spiritual cleanliness and a sense of newness and freshness. And I think the actual act of immersing in the water and coming up contributes to that. And it's a superb night for me. It's just a wonderful feeling.
There's no way that without the observance of this mitzvah, that whatever people say, that one can really experience a feeling of renewal, once a month in a marriage, of coming together again in really a sense of something that you've looked forward to and that you almost like getting married all over again. And that kind of beauty can't be purchased in any other way, so to speak.
I would add one more thing, that this is the one mitzvah, I think, that most convinced me of the truth of the Torah. Because it never did me wrong. In other words, it was the kind of thing, I think, that one would not naturally start doing in a marriage, or any individual would not naturally begin this kind of rhythm. You could not even conceive of doing such a thing. And yet it's the thing that you realize once you're into it and have accepted it, that it really has done a tremendous good for the individual and for the couple and for the marriage.
I think myself as an individual, like other mitzvot, it enhances one's appreciation of when we can spend time together, when Miriam and I are allowed to spend time together. So I think it enhances one's appreciation of actually living.
Well, every month when I go to the mikvah, I look forward to going. It gives a sense of renewal to our relationship. It's something which, as Monty said, helps us to appreciate one another more. And it was never an easy mitzvah to keep, except when I was pregnant. And it's just that because of the discipline that it enforces upon us, I think that, as Monty said, the time that we do spend together is enhanced in that way, because we know that it is like a limited time, and we know that we don't have access to each other, all the time. So it enhances the time that we do have together.
I know that when Miriam comes back from the mikveh, when she does come back, obviously it's a sense of excitement and renewal, as Miriam said. I think very often, if we hadn't observed mikveh, you're always in between stages between if you're in the mood to be physical or not. This sort of allows you the freedom not to be physical during certain times of the month, and other times it sort of enhances your awareness that you should be physical with your wife. So in that sense, yes. But it's not something which I think of very consciously each month. I think much of it is a little more on the unaware stage, that you do it and you go through it and you're enjoying it, but you don't always just step back and think about it consciously, that each month this great experience or whatever that mikveh can be.
It's just an ongoing feeling that's there.
There are psychological benefits as well as health benefits. But we observe Taharat HaMishpacha above all because it is divinely ordained.
Ultimately, a Jew observes Taharat HaMishpacha the same reason that he observes all the mitzvahs of the Torah, simply because God tells him to. That we're beholden to God. God created this world, and He knows and understands things a lot better than we do, and we observe His will. Sometimes we understand it. I have no doubt in my mind that everything that God commands us to do has a reason, that it's for our benefit, that it's for the benefit of the world. Many of the mitzvahs are not only difficult to understand, but sometimes make life difficult. They create difficulties. Certainly, it's now the middle of Pesach. Pesach is not an easy holiday. It has a lot of beautiful elements. It's beautiful, it's pleasant. Families spend time together and really enjoy it. It's an awful lot of work.
Ask me.
Not only for women, for hopefully men help out as well, are involved in preparing and also other aspects of it. It's an awful lot of work. Now, Shabbos is beautiful. It's wonderful. It's magnificent. I mean, sometimes I try to think about what life would be like without Shabbos. What it's like for a person to work, or to have the idea that he can work, in fact, 7 days a week and keep going, and knowing that every day of the week he has the same burdens and pressures. It seems mind-boggling to me not to have a Shabbos, a day when you're relieved of all of those burdens. But as beautiful as it is, if I weren't commanded to observe Shabbos, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't voluntarily just say I'm going to take a week off and not do any work in that week, even though theoretically I know that it's wonderful and it contributes tremendously to one's peace of mind and to the quality of one's life. Nevertheless, I mean, it's very difficult to do that in the kind of life that we live. Everything is important, we're always busy. Unless there's something from the outside that's telling us to do it, we're not going to do it. Sometimes many things in Judaism are difficult, and certainly that's true in terms of Taharat HaMishpacha. Not infrequently it's difficult. On the other hand, it does in fact create, in some ways, a kind of bond, because it means that people have to communicate on a different level than they do when they're permitted to be together physically. They need to be able to to talk. They need to be able to share things in ways other than physical. And though the physical expression is a very important part of love and sharing and caring, it's important to be able to do it otherwise as well.
Under the chuppah, the groom declares his bride sanctified unto him. From that day onwards, they are bound together in marriage and forbidden to all others. This is the bond we celebrate with great joy. Moroccan Jewish custom calls for a bridal party at the mikvah before the wedding.
Yes, I had it when I got married myself. It's a it's a festival, really. The whole family of the bride and the groom, they go together to the mikveh, the women only, and they have a party between women. Everybody wishes something to the bride and jokes, and after the mikveh, after the bride goes into mikveh, after that outside there is a whole party with food and all kinds of jams and cakes and cookies, and it's just it's part of the wedding. That means that the bride is now ready to get married. She is ready, following our tradition. She went in the mikveh, now she's pure, she's ready.
Is it harder to observe Taharat HaMishpacha today than it was in the past?
I think it is harder in today's day and age because we live in a more open, expressive society, and mikveh is a private affair.
It probably is harder these days to keep it because if you just, all you have to do is take a look around outside and you see how couples walking around together, feel very free to put their arms around each other, hold hands type of thing, and we can do that also part of the month, but the rest of the month it's not possible for us to do that, even though we would like to. And so in that sense, I think that it is a little bit harder these days to keep a mitzvah like Taharat HaMishpacha. But again, it's something that you have to discipline yourself. That's one part of the mitzvah that I had a bit of trouble with at first. That I would see couples walking around and they probably weren't even married, holding hands on the street, in the metro, that kind of thing. And I wanted to hold my husband's hand, and it just was something that we had to get used to.
It's something that I have to do. It's part of all Jewish women to do it. It's requested by our Torah. And I won't see not to do it. It's an obligation, first of all. And second of all, it's my time. It's a time for me to think and because we live in such a stressing life where we don't have time to think and to just to give time to Hashem and to think about all that. We run all day. And I think this is very important. This time for me is very precious.
The world is going crazy. And if you don't get close to Hashem, you get lost also. So everybody has to get closer to Hashem.
We see how Taharat HaMishpacha, together with mutual commitment, can build a relationship. This is true from the first day of marriage, throughout the years of building a family.
Religious couples, as I said, are not different from couples that are not religious. They have the same needs and occasionally the same problems, and adapting to a marriage requires a lot of effort. It's not an easy thing. And I think that's, in fact, one of the problems today, that people have magical ideas about what marriage is supposed to be. It's simply because and I think it's a little bit more common in couples that are not religious because of the way they tend to get married. Couples date and they court one another. They often live together for long periods of time. They get to know each other very well. They develop what they consider a very profound level of love. And therefore, when they're ready to make the commitment, what they call a commitment, they're ready to get married, they have the mistaken notion that nothing can go wrong because we love each other, we know each other, so everything is fine, without realizing that, in fact, no matter how well two people know each other, marriage is always an adjustment and always difficulties that need to be taken care of and need to be adjusted to. And couples often go into marriage with the wrong idea. Religious couples are less likely to have that kind of problem.
And I see the relationship that I have with my husband and the tremendous amount of honesty that we have with each other, and the fact that I know that the one person in the whole world that I can depend on more than anyone else is my husband. I know how he feels about me, and I really believe that in a sense that is also related to the fact that we observe the laws of Taharat Mishpacha, the fact that we are not constantly dependent upon each other for a physical relationship, but that we have to depend upon each other for so much more. And it's only a certain period of the month when we can really have this physical relationship with each other, but it doesn't affect the fact that when it comes down to the crunch, 30 days a month, we are together in body and mind, no matter what anyone says, whether we touch each other or we don't touch each other. He's the person for me, always.
Many modern women think that in order to be part of the modern world, in order to aspire to career and goals and all that, one has to give up marriage, maybe a stable relationship in a couple, and certainly the idea of having children, and many children. And I think that this is really false. It certainly has not been true for me, and I see, in fact, that both have really enhanced each other, because the stability in the home life has really enhanced one's ability to go out into the world and to achieve. I guess the other thing that we're faced with in the 80s more than ever is sort of overt displays of sexuality all around us in the media, downtown on St. Catherine Street. I mean, it's there, and I think what this does is that it gives you a sense of privacy. Okay, again, one does not discuss aspects of sexuality. Orthodox people do not discuss that, and I think that it's very private, and even with your own children, it's a little bit difficult. That's something I think we should talk about a little bit, because your children get older, your children know that this is happening somewhere in the month or in the year, and yet one is faced with the problem, of course, of what do you tell your children on the night of the mikvah. One does not want to tell your children that this is where you're going explicitly, but I think it becomes something that's understood in the family and not discussed. And I think even the children learn that this is something they know is taking place, and I think that they are sort of proud that it's taking place. And as they become aware more and more of what it's about, they will not bring it up to the parents. And the parents, I think, will not bring it up to them. And I think this teaches the child as well that this is an essentially private matter. Okay? Later on, of course, children, when they're ready for themselves for marriage, they will learn the details of the mitzvah.
Can the beauty of Taharat HaMishpacha be appreciated by the children? Does parents' observance of the mitzvah influence the second generation?
Maybe on my daughters.
They're familiar with the tradition.
Yes, they are. They're very familiar with the
They're
tradition.
knowledgeable?
Yes.
How old are your daughters?
One is 22 and the other one is 18.
So that they're, marriageable age, and that's when
right.
they get
So
married.
it's very important for them. This is
They will
tradition.
At the beginning of the marriage, there was some difficulty with it, especially given that neither of us came from Orthodox backgrounds, where it was something that we knew about, and that was something that you were sort of prepared gradually for. First, perhaps as a child, you hear about it and you don't really know why. And then, slowly into adolescence, you get a sense of what it's all about. And finally, before marriage, you're actually prepared for what's going to happen. Neither of us had that experience. So for us, it was something we heard about, I would say, a month before our marriage, perhaps 2 months before the marriage. And we thought it was bizarre. We did. We thought it was bizarre, and we really had no understanding of it. And I think in the first year of the marriage, it was a little bit difficult to get onto the rhythm, okay? To sort of deny your own, say, natural rhythms of the first year of marriage and romance and everything that goes along with that. And I think that was really something, I think that was a discipline that was good for the marriage in any case. And I think it's fostered a communication between us, which I think we otherwise may have not been as facilitated. So by the second or third year of marriage, I think we were both much more at peace with the whole idea. and it was easier. And then, of course, there were the pregnancies, which make it a non-issue.
It takes a lot of discipline to get used to this mitzvah, to be able to live with it, and to actually appreciate the effect that it can have on your lives. But I think that it's worth it in spite of the difficulties.
We always felt, or I at the beginning sort of had this insight that it was a kind of barometer of how the marriage was going. Because the feelings that you have, I think, in the on and off periods of teras mishpacha, give you an indication, I think, of whether your marriage is sort of in tune. You're in tune with the marriage is in tune with the couple. For example, during the periods when you're not permitted to be together, then one should begin to have a build-up of the desire to be together again. Now, if you don't, if you have a sort of sense of relief, then probably something is going wrong in the marriage. And I think that without these kinds of external structure, okay, of which sort of structures the intimacy of the couple, you may not necessarily be as aware of those kinds of problems as you are when you have this external structure. So to keep that analogy going, when you are permitted to be together, then you should have this tremendous sense of joy and that finally you are together. And during that period, one should retain that sense. And if in fact you're beginning to feel anxious during that time, something is definitely wrong in the marriage, and it's time to talk.
Particularly in today's society, where extramarital affairs, etc., are not necessarily uncommon, and family breakup is not uncommon, unfortunately, that there's a different sense of stability in the marriage where you're observing Taharat HaMishpacha.
Even after 13 years of marriage, I would say that there has been no sense that we've lost something in that part of our relationship. I would say that we've retained, I'd say, the freshness of the first day of the marriage. And I think I don't know if couples who do not practice this mitzvah can say that after 13 years of marriage.
What the Torah is teaching a Jew is discipline, which means that I have obligations, that even though I might not feel like doing it, or I might want to do something else, the Torah is saying sometimes we have to understand and appreciate there's something more important than how you happen to feel at that particular time. And again, that's how perhaps this notion of Taharat HaMishpacha or mitzvahs in general relate to the overwhelmingly important notion of commitment within a marriage. The idea that because a couple is committed, for most people that means when they feel like it, that means that they are. For a Jew it means, commitment means discipline. It means you're doing things because it's important and necessary, even though sometimes it might be very difficult, and even though sometimes you don't understand it. And that happens to be very important within a marriage, because there are times when marriage is very difficult, when in the best of relationships there's strain and struggle and difficulty, and it requires a lot of effort to overcome those problems and grow and keep going. And I think to a great extent the reason that marriages are not generally succeeding, the reason that divorce is continuing as a very serious problem, is related to the fact that yes, people are committed, but they're committed up to a certain point, up to the point that they can understand, up to the point that they're comfortable with. And I think a Jew is better equipped because of mitzvahs and the discipline that the mitzvahs imposes to understand the commitment goes beyond that. That even when we don't understand, even when it's difficult, that we have a goal, we have a purpose, there's something beyond, something more important.
What should we say to couples who are thinking of taking this mitzvah upon themselves?
I would speak to couples who often say to me, I'd like to observe the laws of Taharat HaMishpacha, but I can't because I can't even get myself to totally observe Shabbos. And I would tell them that it's very important to realize that every mitzvah that a person does is important. And one should not be categorized by the amount of mitzvahs that they observe. And so if a person feels that they're able to observe one mitzvah and not another, they should begin with that mitzvah. That's something I would tell them.
Try it out for a certain period of time, and that period of time should not be 1 month or 2 months, because I think if you just give yourself 1 or 2 months, you're going to forget the whole thing, because I don't think you can gain the appreciation of the mitzvah in 1 or 2 months. I think you have to give it a serious chance for, say, a year or so, and go in with a certain attitude that you'll both be mutually supportive, etc. And it can add a lot of meaning to your life.
Well, I would say that, for one thing, it's one of these mitzvahs that you have to do maybe before you understand, okay? As there are many mitzvahs in Judaism, na'aseh and nishma. And I think that I would encourage couples to jump in, literally jump in, and give it some time before they totally understand. And this will happen, I think, within the first 6 months. The other thing I would say is some couples may have difficulty getting into this because I think for many Jews who were not brought up in religious backgrounds, this is associated with the idea that menstruation is somehow uncleanness for the woman, and this is somehow an aspect of her subordination, okay, and her separation is something evil and bad. And I think that couples sometimes have to understand that these are not Jewish ideas. These are ideas, I think, that are misinterpretations of the real meaning of the mitzvah. And I think they have to begin to learn what the true meaning of this mitzvah is, and what the concepts of tahara and tumah really mean, and not accept some of the kind of old wives' tales that we grew up with.
I wish them good luck, first of all, and strength in the sense of one's making an excellent choice in saying this is something, even if we're not fully observant or we're not observing all Torah mitzvahs, this is one that in and of itself, psychologically, practically, makes very good sense. Although in one way it's the craziest thing in the world to impose on yourself, or for a couple to impose on themselves. In another way, I'd say to a couple, whatever else you're doing or not doing, you can do yourself a favor, do your marriage a favor, do the stability of your marriage a favor, and your relationship and all that sort of thing, by practicing Taharat HaMishpacha.
To be religious does not mean to be ascetic. It doesn't mean to give up the pleasures of life. On the contrary, a Jew is supposed to enjoy life. But within that, recognizing and understanding that there's something behind it, something even more important, there's something above, and living one's life with that being constantly reminded of that. And that's what the mezuzah is on the door when you walk in the house. And that's why we daven 3 times a day, and we wait tzitzit, which reminds us every time you get dressed, you look at it. I mean, everything that a Jew does reminds him of the fact that there's something more important to life than just the here and now and what happens this minute.
Do it. Do it. There is nothing. There's nothing like it. They have to do it. They have to. It's something that we cannot explain. We just tell them do it, and you'll see the difference after in your house, in the couple, in the family.
Every Jewish baby has a birthright, the Torah and its mitzvot. Observing them guarantees the future of Judaism. By keeping the mitzvah of Taharat HaMishpacha, a woman fulfills her determinant role in marriage and family. Her personal example imbues the family with a higher spiritual meaning. God has given us this mitzvah. The choice to take it is ours.
Going into the mikveh, and just this mikveh, which is basically made of natural water, is going back into one's own sources, not the immediate ones, but the sources like man, humanity, which is born like everything in the womb in some kind of water. But it is going even farther and deeper than that. The secret of being old and being renewed, being routine and also being very fresh. The secret of a continuous life, which is not just a prolonged routine situation, but rather has in it the cycle of birth, that doesn't go just once in a time, but is being done again and again. A new birth of life, a new birth of renewed relations, a renewed relationship of man and wife before and after it. The being always new, young in a way, being just born while going on, continuing the old way.